I'm Anthropomantic Fiend, and I do horror-related things on the internet. We have reached the end of the very first chapter of my Heart of the Night reviews things. I finished reviewing pretty much every single one of the movies in this 30 Nightmare Movies box set, with the exception of Night of the Living Dead, because I just love that movie, and I wouldn't really be able to say anything about it that hasn't already been said before, because it's Night of the Living Dead. I think I'm going to call this segment Daybreak, because Heart of the Night reviews, Daybreak, I mean, it kind of has a Twilight vibe that I don't know how to feel about, but it's the only title I can think of. So this is going to be sort of a review, recap, ranking thing based on every movie that's in this box set. I'm gonna go through all 30 movies. I've ranked them, just give a quick recap of my feelings on that movie, and then just overall say if I think it's worth going out and getting this thing. Then I'll give you a little preview of what's coming up next for my Heart of the Night reviews videos. So here is my ranking of all 30 Nightmare movies. At the very, very bottom of the heap, we have Meadowwoods. This is a mid to late 2000s found footage movie about three stupid college kids who are like, they might even be high schoolers, I don't remember, but three kids in a small town who are just like, you know what, we're bored, let's bury one of our classmates in a box. And they said about that. And if it was just the final scene with them burying her in the box and filming it, it might be a somewhat engaging and maybe slightly creepy film. But no, we have to sit through them building the box and arguing with each other. Before that, going to buy wood to build the box and getting interrupted by an old man telling them they can't film in there. Then just being jerks to each other and doing stupid, pointless things leading up to the burying that are not interesting or entertaining, and it's just not enjoyable or well made or interesting, like at all. It's just kind of bleh. I don't like it. I really don't like it. Meadowwoods at the very bottom at number 30. Above that we have at number 29, The Familiar. If you've seen my reviews of these movies, you'll know I did The Familiar and Meadowwoods at the same time because I never wanted to watch them again. And The Familiar actually does resemble a movie. It is, I suppose, a movie. And it's about this guy who's like a reformed pastor who now owns like a gun rental place, and he has fallen out of his faith, and he has like a distant relative or friend move in with him who's like this super hippie person, and there's like a demon of some kind in the house that ends up possessing her, and they have to exorcise her, and all of that sounds like it could be interesting if it weren't so unnuanced, not very interesting, and really, really preachy. It's a very preachy Christian horror movie. I have no problem with horror movies with a Christian mythos, with the good conquering the forces of evil. That's what Dracula and The Exorcist have going on. But this just feels like it's just trying to ram this message down your throat without giving you much of a good movie. The actress who plays the woman who gets possessed, her playing the possessed version of herself is a lot of fun. She plays a really fun sort of demon character, but I'm rooting for the demon, not any of the other characters, because there's no nuance there, and it's all about him reclaiming his faith. And then the worst, most gross part is there's sort of this very like anti-other religions, anti-pagan sentiment with his relative, friend, whatever. She's like this new age religion practicing person, and she's like drawn all these sigils on things, and that's apparently why the demon is there. And there's like, she's like, she thought it was good, but it's evil, we've got to get rid of it. And they start stamping out all of these sigils and putting these crosses in, and just like, just stop, no. So solely for that, and besides that, it's just really boring. The Familiar is down at 29. Above it at 28, but just barely, is Nightmare at Bitter Creek. I couldn't even tell you what this movie's about because I don't remember it. it's really that boring. It's one of the sort of long stretch of made-for-TV thrillers that we get in this box set, and it's so boring. It's so boring. Like, this family has a run-in with the military in the woods and people get shot and I don't even remember. It's boring. It's really boring. The only reason it's above The Familiar is because of sort of that gross attempt at morality in The Familiar. So at 28, Nightmare at Bitter Creek. Up at 27, we have Occupied. This is about a woman, a distant friend or relation of this little girl, like, babysitting her for a few days while her father is away, and she just starts mentally deteriorating while she's there, starts becoming more dangerous to herself and to the girl, and very damaged. And it's a good concept for a movie. And it creates this really cool atmosphere, considering the budget that it's on. But it's just kind of not interesting, because it would make sense if we had any idea who she was, where she came from, and she has all these weird flashes of things, and we never get an explanation of why her mental state is deteriorating. It doesn't have to be like a full-on backstory, but if we just sort of had a bit more to latch onto to why she was going crazy, this movie would work a lot better. I mean, there's a great sort of element of fear of the unknown in a lot of movies, but without a little bit of knowledge of why she's mentally deteriorating, we don't really get anything that is enough for us to grasp what that might be. It just doesn't work as a story that you can be engaged in, so it's just kind of there, and meh. So, Occupied at number 27. At number 26 is Another Kind. This is a movie that had a lot of potential. There's a really cool twist at the ending that I don't want to spoil, but it's a bunch of kids that go hiking in these wintry woods and get super lost, and really weird stuff starts happening to them, and they've got to fight for their survival. There's some sort of surreal stuff and a really creepy twist at the ending that was really good. It's a really well shot movie. The problem with this movie is that the characters do nothing but argue with each other the entire time, and you're just like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. And you can't get behind caring about these characters as they fight for their survival, because they're all just jerks with no real likable qualities to them. They just argue with each other the whole time, which I don't know, maybe if you were stranded in the woods you probably would do that, but they don't really give you anything to care about with these characters, so it just does not work. At number 26, Another Kind. At number 25 is The Wind. This is another movie that I couldn't tell you what it's about, not because I don't remember it, but because it's just utterly incomprehensible. I do not know what this movie's about. There's like all these intertwined plot threads that are super confusing. At the very beginning of the movie, you think it might be a dystopian film, but because of stuff they've said, but it's just the movie trying to be artsy, and it's just set in this small town. And there's these kids that have all these ulterior motives trying to screw each other over, and there's weird, out-of-context erotic scenes that don't mean anything, and I legitimately don't know what that movie is, if you can call it a movie. But it's just so incomprehensibly bizarre that it becomes entertaining for that reason, because it's just out there. Another Kinds was more cohesive and had a good plot, but it just wasn't enjoyable. This movie is barely a movie, but it has more entertainment value, which is why it's in this spot. So at number 25 is The Wind. Coming in at number 24 is Zombie Dearest. I did not think I would rank this movie this low on the list, because it's kind of fun, but upon rewatching it, it's really just kind of cringeworthy for the most part. It's just a lot of uncomfortable situational humor with not many likable qualities to any of the characters, and not enough horror elements to make up for that. I get what they were going for. There's some elements of stupid fun there that I can appreciate, but it just wasn't as fun as I kind of remembered it being from the first time I watched it, and it just wasn't as fun. It's just not a great movie. There's definitely worse, as I've told you, and I can get what they're going for, and there's some elements of stupid fun, but not enough to put it higher on the list. So at number 24 is Zombie Dearest. Coming in at number 23 is Night Scream. This movie is about a girl who comes into a town believing that she's one person, but a bunch of other people in the town believe that she's somebody else, and she keeps having these mental breaks where she becomes this other girl who they believe to be dead, and it's just a very surreal, twisty-turny thing. It's not especially high on the list just because it's one of the made-for-TV thrillers, and just sort of that made-for-TV soap opera quality that a lot of these movies have holds them back, and that's definitely the case for this one. But all things considered, it's a cool, twisty little thriller with some sort of cool, creepy, atmospheric dream sequences. There's lots of fun twists in it. I think it's worth a watch, but it's nothing way up there. So, at number 23, Night Scream. At number 22 is Adrift. This movie and Night Scream could kind of be interchanged, I guess. It's about a couple who go away on a boat. They get lost and pick up these two people who are lost, and after they board the ship, sort of creepy, suspicious stuff starts happening. And it's another one of those made-for-TV thriller type movies, which, after reviewing one of those after the other, I started to get sick to death of. This one, you kind of know what's gonna happen, but just seeing these people stuck, adrift in the ocean, in a boat, and sort of the stuff that goes down while they're isolated on this boat is pretty interesting and fairly entertaining. So I enjoyed Adrift, for sure. Not way out there, but it's a movie, and it was enjoyable. So, at number 22 is Adrift. Coming in at number 21 is Live from Death Row. Yet another made-for-TV thriller type movie. This one is about a news reporter woman who is going to report on this serial killer who is about to get the electric chair while there's a bunch of protesters outside, some against the death sentence and some for. But while he's being broadcast on TV during this interview, he breaks out, kills a guy, takes over the asylum and holds her hostage, and she has to get out while he sort of commandeers all of the film equipment and starts broadcasting his own warped vision of what he wants to do, doing all this crazy stuff inside the prison. It's still not the greatest thing in the world, but every person who's in the asylum has sort of this interesting, twisted vision of life. Him especially. It's very creepy, and there's a lot of food for thought in it, and just some very twisted ideas that it has. So it's a really not fun movie, but an entertaining one, or rather interesting and engaging movie. It's got sort of a soap opera-y feel and a bit of a low quality due to it being made for TV, but that considered, it's a really good movie. So at number 21, Live from Death Row. Coming in at number 20 is Summer of Fear. Yet another made-for-TV thriller. This one is a family going to this cabin for summer vacation. They are attacked by this guy on the road, and this other guy from around town named Simon beats him up and rescues them, and they go onto the cabin, and I can't say a lot, but there's some creepy, suspicious stuff going on with the townsfolk, and one particular person gets very creepy. And it's just a very interesting, fun little thriller. It's based on a book. It has sort of this slightly less quality Stephen King type vibe. It feels like a Stephen King story, just not as good as some Stephen King stuff. but it's still a good movie. There's some interesting bits to all of the characters and some very creepy moments. Nothing special, but a good watch. So Summer of Fear is at number 20. Coming in at number 19 is No One Could Protect Her. Another made-for-TV thriller, the last of those, thankfully. But this one is particularly standout because it is based on a true story. This is about a woman who gets attacked by this murderer, rapist, who has killed some people in town already. It is about her and her husband fighting back against this guy with the intent of catching him. It is not higher on this list just because it's got a bit of that soap opera-y quality due to it being made for TV, which holds it back a bit. But it is still an entertaining, I keep saying entertaining, this one is less of a fun movie. It's not a fun movie at all, but it's a very good story, and it's got some serious real life implications because it is based on a true story, which makes it even more disturbing in a very good way. It makes you think about stuff. No One Could Protect Her comes in at number 19. Above that, at number 18, is The Cry. And this movie is very, very meh, but it's got a sort of cheesy monster movie vibe to it that puts it higher on the list. It is a movie primarily made by Hispanic people about La Llorona, who's in New York. We sort of figure out why she's in New York eventually, but it's kind of weird. It just doesn't connect the way it really should, but I admire the effort and I like a good ghost story, so I appreciate what The Cry was going for. There isn't much there, but it's got sort of that B horror appeal to me that makes it more enjoyable than a lot of the made-for-TV thrillers, which don't really have a supernatural aspect, which I don't. I prefer less realistic, more fantasy-based horror for the most part. And above The Cry, we've got Killjoy. This is a full moon movie. It's super stupid. It's about a killer clown taking revenge on a bunch of gang members in the hood, and it's not even trying to be serious. It's super, super stupid. It's what you'd expect from a stupid, full moon movie. And it's got lots of cheesy special effects and gags, and I love that. This is a B monster movie to the core, which I can appreciate. It's not one of the better, more entertaining of the B-type monster movies. I'd like to watch more full moon movies because I've actually heard the Killjoy sequels are better. And it was a fun movie. Not a lot, but it was fun. At 17, Killjoy. Coming in at number 16 is Howling 4. Now, I reviewed all of the first 4 Howling movies on the channel, and this is by far the worst one of them. But it's still a Howling movie. If I were just to take it on its own as part of this set, it would rank here, because it's a decent werewolf story. The melting scene, oops, spoiler, there's melting. I won't tell you what melts or why, but there's melting. That and some cool stuff that happens at the end of the movie make it worthwhile. It's just the previous 3 Howling movies are a lot better, especially the first one. The other 2 are super stupid, but in that really good B-monster movie way, like I was saying with Killjoy, I would rank those 2 above Killjoy. Those are really good B-monster movies, but I'm getting off on a tangent. Howling 4 is just kind of a decent middle-of-the-road werewolf movie. At number 16, Howling 4. Coming in at 15 is Samuel Bleak. And this movie isn't even a horror movie, but it's a good little sort of dark thriller drama movie about a man who is found in the woods in this small little town. He never speaks. He's very shy. He's almost got this sort of Edward Scissorhands type demeanor to him. We just sort of see gradually different bits of his troubled past as he puts his life back together, and these people in this psych ward that he's in, this girl who's suicidal and another guy. I don't recall what his sort of mental thing that he's struggling with is, but he becomes friends with eventually Samuel, and they all sort of sort out their lives eventually, and it's really sort of a little bittersweet story. It could have been done better, but it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. Number 15, Samuel Bleak. Coming in at number 14 is Blind Witness. This is pretty much a really low budget movie that takes sort of this blind woman versus killers aspect of a movie like Wait Until Dark and amps up the intensity because early on in the movie her husband gets murdered, and it's her job, despite sort of society being against her and her judgment because she's blind, to track down the murderers while they're trying to get rid of her so that they don't have anybody after them because of this murder, which they have their motives for. And it's just a solid thriller horror movie. Again, not super standout, but it's a well-made movie and I enjoyed it. Number 14, Blind Witness. Coming in at number 13 is The Nurse. This is a movie about a nurse who's been through a lot and another man who's been through a lot. He winds up suffering locked-in syndrome and becoming paralyzed, and this nurse woman, because of something he did, her dad has committed suicide, so she ends up going to take care of him and his family and starts trying to pick them off one by one. And it's a very dark premise with a very twisted idea to it, and we've got Lisa Zane giving a wonderfully sort of fun, creepy, very twisted performance as the nurse. And it's just a really, really solid movie with, despite how horrible it is what she's doing, there's some very interesting, twisted little details to the story, and she is just delightfully evil and warped in this movie, and I really enjoy this film. So coming in at 13 is The Nurse. Coming in at number 12 is Behind Your Eyes. This is a more recent film. It is about this couple who are dating, they're planning to get engaged, so they are driving out to meet this guy's parents, but they are stopped by this other guy at a gas station who's holding them at gunpoint, who takes them to this cabin, and stuff just gets weird from there. I thought this was going to be one kind of horror, and it took another turn, and this is another sort of very twisty movie. It's really, really good at playing with your expectations. Not as good as some of the movies I'm about to get to, but it's good at that. And it makes you second guess yourself quite a bit. It's just a really well shot, dark, entertaining horror movie. So, number 12, Behind Your Eyes. Coming in at number 11 is Killer Killer. I would recommend going into this blind and me not telling you anything, but a bunch of killers find themselves in this sort of limbo in their prison, and they start dying for no reason because there's a demon who's been unleashed. She takes killers into these sort of very interesting serial killers, each with their own sort of distinct personality and gimmick, takes them into scenarios where she is the victim and they're going to murder her, but she ends up turning the tables on them and killing them, and she just sort of starts picking them off, and it's a really fun role reversal slasher type movie with a fun demonic element, and it really is just a horror comedy, and it's all kinds of fun. I highly recommend Killer Killer for that reason. Coming in at number 10 is I Am Omega. This is a riff on, the Matheson I Am Legend story, which has been made as The Last Man on Earth, The Omega Man, and I Am Legend. It's this guy who thinks he's the last man on Earth, and is fighting against what were vampires in the original. They're zombies in this, and if you know the I Am Legend story, it's very similar but a bit different. It's got more of an action slant than some of the other movies. It's just a really solid sort of zombie horror action type film. Very entertaining for that reason, and I highly recommend it. Coming in at number 9 is Last of the Living. This is the first movie I ever reviewed on the channel, and it's a zombie comedy about this group of guys who have just been living in their apartment or flat, whatever you want to call it, and just eating junk food and playing video games. But eventually they decide to leave and become embroiled in this just fight for survival, and all of the characters are really fun. Unlike Zombie Dearest, there's lots of really good situational comedy in this movie, and it's just really fun zombie horror comedy type movie with a fun sort of action slant to it. Coming in at number 9, Last of the Living. At number 8 is Hide and Creep. I just reviewed this movie. It's about the zombie apocalypse coming to the small town of Thorsby, I believe that's in Alabama, and just this wonderfully bizarre cast of characters and how they deal with the zombie apocalypse. And this movie is just revels in its campiness, and it knows horror and it knows how to do comedy really well, and it's just a lot of fun B-grade zombie-ness. So at number 8 is Hide and Creep. Coming in at number 7 is Dire Wolf. This is about a mutated prehistoric wolf creature that escapes from a laboratory and starts killing people, and how this small town and the government who's trying to cover it up have to deal with this monstrous direwolf creature. And it really feels like almost a 50s B-movie type thing, but with sort of an 80s cheesy horror mentality and some great gore. The effects in this are low budget but enjoyable, lots of texture to them, lots of great gore. This is just a really fun monster movie. I really love Direwolf, and I highly recommend it. So at 7 is Direwolf. At number 6 is Prom Night. This is a classic early 80s slasher film with Jamie Lee Curtis about a killer who is killing off this group of teenagers as they're preparing for prom. And it's just classic slasher fare. Most of you have probably seen it at this point. A lot of fun. Highly recommend it. Coming in at number 5 is Salvage. This is a really cool movie. I really love this movie. It is about this girl who comes home one day to find this killer in her house who brutally murders her. And then she wakes up. And then it happens again in another situation. And then she wakes up. And it's got this sort of Groundhog Day thing where she's being repeatedly killed by this guy, and she cannot figure out why, so she's trying to figure out why she's being killed while trying to avoid this nightmare situation and trying to convince her friends that she's not completely crazy. And it feels like a modern, full-length Twilight Zone episode in that respect, almost. Especially because it has one of the best twists I've seen in a long time. A really good twist ending. It's got a slasher element. It's got weird, surreal Twilight Zone vibes. There's a supernatural element. And it's just really good. It's a really good movie. Salvage, coming in at number 5. Please watch it. Coming in at number 4 is Prom Night 2. I like this one a little better than Prom Night 1 just because it lets loose with the campy supernatural thing. It's not really connected to Prom Night 1, aside from the fact that it's set at prom, and you've got this woman who died on prom night in the 50s named Mary Lou, and she is trying to come back. It's just super campy 80s horror fun. And I don't want to say too much more than that because that would spoil some stuff, but it's just a really enjoyable, campy 80s horror flick. So another one you've probably seen at this point. So Prom Night 2. Coming in at number 3 is The Inflicted. This movie is the one that actually gave me nightmares. This one follows a woman who goes on a date with this guy and then gets drugged by him, experimented on, and impregnated, and she has a baby. He lost his little sister in a really messed up way, and he's trying to recreate the family he never had. It's just a really, really messed up movie. It's got, rest in peace, Sid Haig in it, Doug Bradley's in it, Bill Moseley's in it. Just for those three, it's phenomenal. But it's a very creepy movie, very well shot, and with some very disturbing and messed up scenes in it. So I highly, highly recommend The Inflicted to you. So that's my number 3. Coming in at number 2 is Summer School. This is another sort of surreal one. This is about a kid who has spent all night watching trashy horror movies. He's going to summer school classes and keeps falling asleep. And he falls asleep and will wake up in these nightmare horror scenarios in which he'll die, and then he'll wake up in another horror scenario. So it becomes this anthology movie with a bunch of different directors directing different segments. It's just really, really, really fun for that reason. It takes a turn into slashers, into supernatural stuff, into monster movies, into exploitation, and it's just an absolute blast. It's very campy, not taking itself too seriously, and above all, the people who made this movie absolutely love horror in all of its many forms, which is all I could ask for, to be honest. So coming in at number 2 is Summer School. This would more or less be my number 1 if I were only listing movies that I actually reviewed, but I'm not. So my number 1 is Night of the Living Dead. Because it's Night of the Living Dead, I don't think I need to say anything else about that. That is my ranking of every movie in the 30 Nightmare Movies box set. Is it worth it to get this thing? Yes, it is. There is some absolute garbage in here, but The Inflicted is amazing, Salvage is amazing, Summer School is an absolute riot. You've got 2 prom night movies in here. You can find Night of the Living Dead anywhere at this point, but why not have another copy of Night of the Living Dead? And just a lot of really enjoyable movies amongst the trash. Some of it's enjoyable trash. 30 Nightmare Movies, I would say, gets a thumbs up. It is worth buying. You should. And it's probably cheaper than just buying the good movies individually. And maybe you will like some of the garbage in this. I won't change my mind about the fact that it's garbage, but 30 Nightmare Movies is good, in a manner of speaking. So that's more or less the video, but here's a little peek at what I'm going to be doing next. I'm going to be reviewing something even more extensive than 30 Nightmare Movies, which is the Horror Collection, Volume 1. This is 41 movies. 41. That being said, one of them's Night of the Living Dead, because that's in every box set. So, 40 movies. Still. Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Vincent Price. Yes, good. So, this is gonna be a lot of classic 30s, 40s, 50s type B-movies for the most part, mixed in with some 70s and 80s fare, which is honestly more up my alley than some of the more modern stuff, because I like my monster movies. Be looking for Heart of the Night reviews. I guess I'll say it's season 2, so we've got the Horror Collection Volume 1 coming up soon. So I don't know what else I need to say, except thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and hopefully I'll see you in another video. Bye.